Hello, this is Arnie Johnson from, I'm a frequent collaborator with Let It Ripple and the Moxie Institute, and we're here today on Character Day to talk about character and many other subjects, because this is also the day we launched our two new films, The Making of a Mensch and The Adaptable Mind. And of course, we had our film last year, The Science of Character, on Character Day as well. So we're bringing in conversations all day with folks who we love and admire and who can contribute to this conversation in wonderful ways. And we have the special privilege today of, I don't even have to moderate this conversation, because we have a great moderator from NBC, their lead education correspondent, Rehema Ellis, Rehema, sorry. And I'll let her take over at this point, introducing our other guests. But I just want to say how happy we are to have you all, and how excited we are to hear what you're going to talk about.
This is great. Thank you so very much. This is good stuff. We've got with us today a couple of panelists who are going to drive this conversation into some clarity, I hope, for all of those of you who are listening about and thinking about what character means and how we help young people develop it. First off, let me introduce Richard Weissbourd. He's a senior lecturer at Harvard Graduate School of Education, directs the Human Development and Psychology program he's called Dr. Love on campus, just to add that little part in. He also directs what's called the Making Caring Common project, which is a national effort to make moral and social development priorities in child raising. Also joining us is Michele Borba. She is a psychologist, and she is a Today Show contributor. She is an expert when we talk about parenting, bullying, and youth violence, and some of those issues absolutely revolve around the questions of character. I want to start, Michele, since it's ladies first, tell me, why do you think it's important that we should even talk about character in relation to teenagers? Why do we have to talk about this?
Let me count the ways. I think number one is that we need to keep in mind that character absolutely matters. Particularly, we're looking at a very big society here that's so driven on tests, celebrities, and fame that we've underlooked just the basic heart of a child. So this is all about what we really want most in our kids. When they grow up, we want them to be good people. And we want them to also have the skills that they can thrive and survive someday without us. That's what character is going to do for our kids.
And Richard, talk to us about what do we really mean, though, when we say character? What is the real meaning of character?
Character has a lot of different meanings to different people. I think there's a distinction that's important to make, and it's between performance character and moral character, ethical character. Performance character is really about things like working hard and perseverance and grit. It's about how well we do, how much we accomplish. Ethical character is about being a caring and ethical person in the world. It's about honesty and fairness and clarity about justice and commitment to justice. I think we're doing okay around performance character, actually. I mean, in our surveys, kids get that hard work is important. I think adults are really emphasizing hard work. I don't think we're doing so well around ethical character, around really, as Michele said, highlighting the importance of concern for others and concern for the common good.
Richard, I want to stay with you for just a minute, because I want to make certain there's a distinction here, if there is, that we make that distinction between personality and character. There is a difference?
People, again, use these terms very differently. Personality is often used to refer to temperament, like the things that we are born with. Character is more considered something that we develop or that we learn, that's environmentally influenced. But these words can be used interchangeably. Sometimes people use personality in a way that suggests that it is influenced by your environment.
So, Michele, in as much as you work very much with educating people around how to behave as far as bullying is concerned, how do you help people, how do you teach people how to have good character?
I think the number one is top. Parents need to realize enormously how important they are in terms of just how they influence their children's lives and their character. Example's the best way to do it. So I always tell parents, the most important question you can ask yourself every night before you go to sleep is, my kid had only my behavior to watch today. I think our kids are arrive to us with kind of video cam recorders inside their head, and they're playing us back at the most inopportune moment. The second thing is, ask yourself what really matters. When all's said and done and your child is grown up and now he's 40, and you look at your kid, what is the character traits you hope above all else he possesses? Rarely, yes, our kids' parents want us to hope that they're happy, but a lot of times we overlook that, hey, yeah, but I want him to be respectful, or I want him to be persevering, or I want him to be kind. And then you rewind that a little bit and you say, okay, so when's the last time this week that you even mentioned that to your child? Mention how important it is to be kind in this family, or took a moment to just discuss it, or point it out in a movie or online on a TV show, whatever. It's cleaning up a little bit.
So, Richard, let me ask this. Character is not something to be assumed that a child will grow into, such as what height they're going to be or the color of their hair, but this is something that we have to teach our children?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be very deliberate about it, very intentional about it, and systematic about it. You know, one of the things that comes up in our research is that when you ask kids what's most important to their parents in child raising, they say, they tend to say achievement first, happiness second, and caring is third. I think, Michele was just suggesting this, that parents tend to be prioritizing these aspects of success over caring. When around the dinner table, parents are asking kids about their grades and whether they're doing their homework. They're not asking them about whether they did an act of kindness or contributed to the community in some way that day, or saw somebody, or made a new friend even. So that's where the action is. The action is around achievement, and it's around happiness. It's not around caring and in the way that it should be. Just one more thing. Parents are not asking their kids to do chores as much anymore either. I mean, just to help around the house, to pitch in. And, that's one way you build the reflexes in kids to be attentive to others and care for others. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
On that point, Richard, are you suggesting that developing a child's character can help develop their social skills, and in so doing also have an impact on their grades and how they perform in school?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
parents are so interested in grades and school performance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to say two things about it. There's a lot of research that indicates that things like self-control, self-regulation, empathy, perspective-taking, social awareness, all these things are important for your relationships. And, that's having good relationships is probably the most important predictor of happiness and gratification that we have. They're also important for grades. I mean, kids who can have self-control and empathy and social awareness are doing better in school by and large. They really matter for grades. The second thing I want to say, though, I just want to clarify, is I don't think we should tell kids to be caring or to be empathic because it'll make them happy or because it'll make them get better grades. I think we should tell them to do those things because it's the right thing to do, because it's the moral thing to do. So even though there are a lot of benefits to kids being caring, I think that we got to talk about caring for its own sake.
Michele, I'm curious, how did we get to this point where we even have to talk about character like this? Maybe it's what you've been saying, that we're not having these conversations around the dinner tables. Did we used to have these conversations around the dinner tables, or did we leave it to schools to teach our children character?
Well, step number one is we used to have something called dinner table conversations. That seems to be off the chart. So there's a lot of changes, and I think the first thing we need to really tune into, just as an American group of parents, is that culture does matter. The culture that we raise our children in does impact their character. And what has happened in the last particularly 10, 20 years is slowly and gradually character has taken a back seat. Tests, grades, rank, and all those other things have taken the front seat. And as a result, what we're seeing across the board is honesty is going down, empathy is going down, narcissism is going up. All the things that we're concerned about in terms of the overall raising a good kid are going downward, which means we really do exactly what Rick says, need to take it up a notch and be far more intentional. Doesn't mean it has to be hard. but it just needs to have to be a routine, regular pace that we say, hey, this matters, and this is what I'm going to start doing in my own house to make sure that my kids, when they leave, have something of heart as well as mind.
Michele, let me stay on you with you just for 1 second, because you talked about honesty is going down, but everybody's concerned about grades going up. Can grades go up if you're dishonest? But they won't go up honestly.
The problem, yeah, what we're looking at is that most of our children are even admitting that they are cheating in order to get the grade. That becomes a real red flag.
Cheating's way up.
Ask our kids, why are you cheating? Many of them are saying exactly what Rick said, because my parent above all else wants me to get the grade, and that's what matters most. So a lot of this is these little hidden subliminal messages that are coming through, and our kids are picking them up.
Richard, is this bigger than one household? It seems like we're talking about something that may have a cultural impact. It may be something in our society beyond what's happening in our individual homes.
You know, I think this is a great question. I would, and I just wanted to, I think it's related to your question. I wanted to add to something that Michele said about the history here, and your question about the history here. You know, throughout most of American history, it was considered mother's role to raise good citizens, to raise caring, respectful, obedient kids. I mean, we may have disagreed with some of the values that parents were focused on, and fathers should have been about cultivating those values as well, but it was very much mother's role. It was not considered mother's role to raise kids who were happy, for example. So this is something that has changed in American families. Public schools in this country and most private schools were founded to develop ethical character in kids. That is not their mission anymore. Participation in religion is down. In boys and girls clubs are down. So these contexts for moral development are disappearing as well. I mean, I think that's the important history here. In terms of culture, the one thing, you know, I would say is I think this, you know, and our data show this is pervasive across many different American cultures, but it also takes very different forms in different cultures. You know, in many low-income communities, kids are achieving for a moral reason because they want to get back to they want to be able to support their families or give back to their families. They're not achieving because they want to get into a selective college. You know, there are big race and culture differences. In many immigrant families, there isn't this intense focus on the self. There's much more collective responsibility. So there are cultural differences that are important to pay attention to. I also think there is this big trend that's affecting everybody toward increased selfishness.
So if there are, and Michele, you can jump in here, if there are these changes in our culture, so much moving around, the one thing that is constant is we still have schools, and we still require children to go to schools, at least from K through 12. With that being true, is it incumbent then upon our schools and our educators, our teachers, to be the ones who are responsible for teaching character in addition to everything else that they've got to teach? Michele?
Well, number one is parents have been and always will be their children's first moral educators, and they need to take that role. But that said, schools are doing an extraordinary job of taking this up a notch and weaving character in. It's not like they're teaching character in addition to everything else. I can't imagine a school being a top-notch school of excellence if they don't have a framework that says character matters. And it means while they're teaching history, they're sitting there taking a moment to say, okay, let's talk about Japanese American internment camps. Was that right? Was that just? So you're using virtues, but you're weaving it in. You're talking about Charlotte's Web, but you're going one step more, and you're going, hey, how would you feel if you were Wilbur? So it's those little teeny moments when you can take it up a notch and be intentional. A lot of schools are also weaving it into their mission statement. So each month it's one virtue, like maybe it's Respect Month, but they're finding simple ways to talk about it, maybe finding a hero each month who emulates that particular virtue, so kids begin to see it's a real and meaningful, that the character matters, but it's also woven into the fiber of everything in every part of our lessons.
Richard, would you jump in and offer your thoughts on that?
Thank you.
Are schools the place where we should be looking to now for them to provide the
You read my mind. I was hoping to jump in, so thank you. I think schools are always, I mean, I want to just add to something Michele was saying. I think schools are always doing character development, whether they choose to or not, because character development happens in relationships all the time. You know, if you respect your teachers and want to become like them, that's character development. If your teacher is fair or unfair, that's character development. How your teacher handles problems in the building like honesty or dishonesty or cheating or stealing affects your character development. So I don't think schools have a choice. I think the question is, are you going to do this well or are you going to do this badly? And then we should be intentional about doing it. I also think that, you know, we get into this thing where, you know, schools sometimes say it's parents' job and parents say it's school's job. It's all of our job. We'll never get there unless we all take it on. And, you know, there are low burden, light lift things that schools can do, and Michele was, you know, talking about them, that can be very effective in building character. So I think this is everybody's responsibility.
We are joined on screen by Jennifer Miller, who's from Ohio. Jennifer, you have a question for our panelists?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I have to echo, first of all, hello, everyone, and I echo your sentiments about parents and schools taking responsibility, working together to support one another in helping our kids in their moral development. I wanted to ask, I'm a parent educator, and I'm particularly interested in simple, everyday ways parents can influence their kids' moral development. And I appreciated the dinner table conversation. I think that's an excellent way, and certainly parents that I work with, we talk about that. But are there other ways in day-to-day busy life that you see are simple ways to get it in?
When I do parent education, I teach an acronym called TEACH, T-E-A-C-H, and I say the simplest thing you can do is every week or each month, just target yourself one virtue. Maybe it's respect or maybe it's kindness, so you don't feel like you're bombing yourself out here. But here's 5 things you can simply do. Key is target it in your mind and say, this is what I'm going to take on, little simple everyday moments that whenever it comes up, I'm going to use this particular virtue and talk about it. E is be the example of it. Aristotle told us this years back, best way to teach character is not a worksheet, but watching somebody else. So figure out how do you tune it up in yourself. A is accentuate it naturally. Maybe some parents are, you know, checking out maybe certain movies for that particular month, and as they're watching maybe a movie night on Anne Frank, they're weaving in kindness and talking about her as an example, but it's little ways to weave it in. My girlfriend used to cut out all of Dear Abby's, and what she'd do on Dear Abby's is for resilience and problem solving, she'd do the dinner table conversation, but give them the problem and say, now how would you answer it if you were Abby? What she was getting kids to do is think about it, be resourceful, but she was also tuning into where her kids' moral reasoning was at. C is catch the child the moment they're doing it right. We spend so much time correcting kids when they're doing it wrong, but if you could say, wow, that was being kind, and then always use the word because this is what you did, you're taking up. And then finally, H is highlight why you think the virtue is important. Kids aren't mind readers. They'll be more likely to adopt it if they know why it's important, and then they'll be more likely to use it the rest of their lives.
Richard, you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah, I think Michele and I are talking about the same things, maybe a little bit different ways. I think practice is really important. I think weaving it into day-to-day household routines. So kids are setting the table, clearing the table, pitching it around the house, pitching it around the community, that every time you set the table, you don't get a parade either. It's not like you're Cinderella. It's part of what you're expected to do. Those are the ethical expectations in the household that you pitch in. I think it's asking, as Michele was suggesting, ethical dilemmas regularly. They come up in TV, they come up in every day. Ethical dilemmas come up. Should I invite a kid to my birthday party who I don't really like but doesn't have friends? And these are great opportunities to talk about our obligations to other people, our responsibilities for other people. Kids are ethical philosophers. They love to talk about these kind of questions. And I think it's holding kids to high ethical expectations. So it is making them, it's requiring them to write thank you notes. It's, you know, requiring them to thank the bus driver and the school secretary and the custodian. It's requiring them to be respectful to your friends. It's in all those day-to-day ways where we really say, this is the person you ought to be, and are consistent about that.
You know,
That builds character.
to add one
I
more
want
thing
to.
too is you
Yes,
got,
go ahead.
I love the word service, and it's coming up, but how cool to be able to do it together as a family instead of, don't think of character as a once a year, let's go visit a soup kitchen, but a 365-day affair that you can do simple little things, and it could be nothing more than let's bake an extra set of cookies and go bring it to the neighbor next door because she's housebound.
Yeah.
Or my gosh, look at those leaves over there. Let's go help the other neighbor. You know, finding easy ways, but joining force together so kids begin to see, hey, this is an expectation in the house, but they're also seeing that character is an action. It's really not a noun. I think that's what we really need to do more often is make character a verb. So kids begin to see it, it's doing it, and not just talking about it.
I want to bring in another question here from someone who's joined us online, and it's from Ted. I think he's from Vail, and he points out that teens are a tough crowd to impress. We all know that, and making morally defensible decisions. Sometimes it's hard for them to defend their decisions in their crowd. So the question is, what have you found to be the most effective means of communicating do the right thing to teenagers? Richard?
So there's another great question. I do think that teens are very complicated. I mean, we have this idea that teens are like this separate species and they spin off and go to another planet and we can't really reach them and they're going to be rebellious. But they're wonderful in a lot of ways too. They're developing a conscience. They're very interested in ethical questions of many kinds. They're very interested in leadership and taking leadership. So, I think engaging teenagers in ethical questions can be very important. Holding them to high ethical expectations is really, in fact, what I think they want. Treating them as if...
And how do you get them to be strong, Richard? Richard, what do you say to the teenager who feels as though, what do you say to the teenager who feels that it's hard to have character and to stand up and do the right thing when everybody around him or her is not?
Well, so this is another great question. So I think it is hard, but I will say it's not only hard for teens, it's hard for adults. I mean, this is true in schools as well, that a lot of adults and teens know this. Teachers aren't reporting on some other teacher who everybody knows isn't functioning well, for example, and yet they're telling all the kids to be upstanders. So I think it's very important to tell teens that it's important to stand up for principles and to stand up for each other. But as adults, I think we really need to engage in the conversation and in the difficulties of it. So we really need to connect to our teens and say, you really need to do this, but open up the conversation. Why is it hard to do? What would enable you to do it? What's the right strategy? Brainstorm with teens about how to handle these situations.
Michelle, we have run out of time, but I'm going to give you the last word on this, on building character. What's the final thing that you would say?
You can make an enormous difference on your child's life. You weave it in. You don't give up, because in the end, when all's said and done and that kid's out of the house, there's no rewind button. This is what really matters most, is raising good kids.
This has been terrific. I want to thank Jennifer Miller, who joined us on screen, those who asked questions online. In addition, I'd like to thank Michele Borba, Dr. Borba, for being with us. Thank you all. This is enlightening. I'm a parent of a 12-year-old boy, and I'm going to take some of these tips and incorporate them into my own parenting. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you again. This is Arnie again from the Moxie Institute and LetItRipple.org. Thank you all again for being here, and Rehema for leading such a wonderful conversation. We were all riveted here. This was really a model for how a conversation like this should go. Speaking of modeling character for young people, it was a model for us on how to have a really in-depth conversation in a short amount of time. Thank you all so much.
Well, you are such a good guy. Thank you so much. You're modeling character for all.
Yeah. Thanks all around, guys.
Thank you. And for those of you who are watching, this conversation is continuing at characterday.org. The next conversation will be in a few minutes, and for the next couple hours, you can continue to jump into these issues with us. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.